Hi everyone, I'm Hector Garcia, CPA and long-time QuickBooks user. I've been using QuickBooks for over 15 years, QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, and I'm excited to talk to you about an extension for QuickBooks Online that you can download for free. It's called RightTool, and I'm going to put the link to this page in the description. Simply you go into the Chrome Web Store, and you're going to click right there where it says Add to Chrome or Add to Microsoft Edge. It only works with Chrome and Edge and some Chromium-based browsers, but for the most part, it's going to be Chrome and Edge. So if you're using Safari or some other type of browser, it might not work. But all you have to do is click on Add to Chrome, click on Add Extension, and essentially that's it. That's going to download and install RightTool into your browser. This is going to work with QuickBooks Online. You're going to get a quick pop-up letting you know that you just installed RightTool and what the terms of service is. We can X out of that. Okay, now I switched over to QuickBooks Online, and you're going to see RightTool here on the right side of the screen. Now, generally speaking, you're going to have both your left navigation bar here on the left-hand side. That's the one that comes with your QuickBooks Online. And now you're going to have RightTool on the right-hand side. So generally speaking, you're probably not going to be using both navigation bars. So what you can do is you can just close the left navigation bar, and everything that you need that's in that left navigation bar is now going to be on the right navigation bar plus more. So we're going to discuss that in a second. All right, let's dig into the meat and potatoes of this thing. So here in the right navigation bar, you're going to see a couple of key elements. First key element here is going to be the new button, which is basically going to be the equivalent to the new button that you press on the left navigation bar. So while your left navigation bar is collapsed or your focus is on the right side of the screen, that plus sign is right there so you can create any new transactions that you want. We also have the settings button right here, which you can press and it opens up that settings button. So basically the two most important functions in QuickBooks Online, which is the plus new transaction button and the settings button, are literally next to each other. But that's not really that important. That's just pretty much proximity to your tools. So you have them right there on the right hand side. The main feature here that RightTool has is the ability for you to create your own custom favorites. So when you first install RightTool, there's going to be a set of custom favorites that come by default. There's 7 that come by default. Maybe when you watch this in the future, we will package it with 8 or 9 or 10. It doesn't really matter. You can actually customize this as you want. But first, let me talk to you about how they work. So if I click on Bank Feed, simply that's what it does. It takes me into Bank Feed. If I click on Bank Register, that's what it does. It takes me into the bank register. Now I can delete any of these favorites if I don't want. So let's say I don't want bank register and I don't want account and home. Simply clicking on that star gets rid of it, removes it. Now if I want to add new favorites, there's 2 ways to do it. One is I can navigate to whatever that screen is that I want to make it my favorite. Let's say my chart of accounts is something I want to make my favorite. So I'm simply going to click on Add Custom while I'm on that screen. I can give it a custom name if I want to, or I can just click on Save, and there it is. And notice that it's in orange because it's a custom favorite. Let's say, for example, I wanted to add the savings account register in there as well. So I'm going to click on View Register. That opens it to the specific screen that I want. I'm going to click on Add Custom, and then I'm going to put here Register for Savings or something like that, just so we can make it really easily identifiable. So that's how we create custom favorites in this RightTool. Now, just to be clear, you can collapse the right navigation bar if you don't want to use it, and you can use a whole bunch of other tools that we're going to talk about soon. But for the time being, while you're looking at it and while you're in favorites, that's pretty much what you will be doing. Now, something that's really neat about the favorites bar is that if I have a predetermined set of tabs that I always go to, let's say as part of my workflow, these are the 7 screens that pretty much I open. I can click on this Open All button and basically opens up all the tabs in one shot, the ones that I customize in that favorites list. And then simply I can go from tab to tab and navigate my QuickBooks Online. So right now I told it to load, 7 different tabs. So it's taking its time to load, but once they're loaded, they're all loaded for you in one shot. So you can simply just go tab 1, tab 2, tab 3, tab 4, tab 5, tab 6, 7, 8. You get the point. So all these tabs pretty much open in one shot. Okay, for the time being, I'm going to close each of these tabs simply by just clicking on the X. There is a keyboard shortcut to close them all in one shot, but for now, let's just assume that's what we have, and we'll navigate that stuff a little bit later on. Now let's talk about how to create your own shortcuts from the shortcuts database, or your own favorites from the shortcuts database. Down here under favorites, you're going to see all shortcuts and all reports. So if I click on all shortcuts, you're going to go into a database that contains every single screen that QuickBooks Online has that can be accessed via a direct link. So for example, I go to customers and sales, and let's say this receive payment is something that I go to quite a bit. So I'm going to click on the star. And let's say, for example, invoice center is something that I always go to quite a bit. I'm going to click on the star. And let's say that add new customers, something that I do quite a bit, I'll click on that star. So by clicking on those stars, let's do something else. Let's go into vendors and let's click on the star for bill, and let's do vendor with details. So by clicking on all those stars, I can go back to favorites, and then it creates those custom shortcuts for me. Now you will notice that 1 through 10 are numbered because there's direct keyboard shortcuts for those first 10, assuming those are the ones you access the most. So we'll get to keyboard shortcuts in a little bit. But that, in a nutshell, is how you can create those custom bookmarks. And again, if I want to delete one of these, let's say I don't want to see balance sheet and I don't want to see bill because I made a mistake, just click on the star, that gets rid of them. You can also do this with reports. So I can click here, it says all reports, and then I go into the complete reports database for QuickBooks Online. And let's say I want to go to business overview and I want to have my balance sheet right there. So basically bringing it back, and the balance sheet detail, and also the profit and loss detail. So just click on those stars, go back into favorites, and there it is. It's loaded into my list of favorites. So you can customize that as you want, or you can just navigate directly through there. Okay, so that's pretty much the premise of RightTool originally. Now, there's a couple of additional features that you want to know. I'm going to click here in the settings button, and right now, everything else is turned off. All these little knobs are settings that you can turn off and on. The free version of RightTool contains about 20 different settings that you can completely customize. The pro version, which is not the free version, is the one that you pay for, contains additional features that are mostly for power users, accountants, folks working with QuickBooks with multiple company files, that sort of thing, because those tools are more geared towards that group of people. For this specific video, we're going to be focused only on the free tools. Okay, so the first free tool I'm going to turn on here is Universal Search. And the second one I'm going to turn on is Manage Tabs. I'm going to turn both of these at the same time so I can kind of walk you through what they do. So I'm going to click here, Save, Refresh all QBO tabs. That way, any QBO tab that I have open gets refreshed with the new settings. So I'm going to go back into that screen, and now you're going to see a new option here called Manage Tabs. Now, the purpose of Manage Tabs is that when I have multiple tabs in QuickBooks up here, that I can know which tab I'm in and navigate straight to it. So for example, I'm going to go back into favorites, and then I'm going to tell it to open up all those favorites in one shot. So I'm going to click here, it says open all, and then I'll just wait for all of them to load. And I'm recognizing that at the moment, I'm loading about 11 different screens inside QuickBooks Online. So I'm just going to be patient, wait for it to load, and then we're going to show you how that Manage tab really becomes a huge helper. Now that a bunch of tabs are open, you can see up here, there's a whole bunch of tabs. I can click to every one of those tabs. And usually when you're working with QuickBooks Online, you have the option of opening new tabs instead of working all within the same tab. Now, most people don't use multiple tabs because they're very difficult to manage. And what we've solved with RightTool is we have here where it says Manage Tabs. This is basically a tab manager. So instead of having to move your attention up here to where all the tabs are, you can just look into the same RightTool and then click straight where you want to go. So if you want to go into vendor detail, click on that and it'll open up that tab that's already open. Or I want to go back into the register, click on that open tab, and it takes you right back over there. Now, something that's really, really cool is once you have the Manage Tabs section open, you can click here, it says Close All Tabs, and in one shot, I can just hit OK, and all those open tabs get closed, and it just leaves the one tab that I was looking at the moment. So the Manage Tabs is really, really powerful. Now, I want to show you something else. I'm going to go back into favorites here for a second, and I'm going to open a couple of them. So I'm going to open bank feed, and I'm going to open, let's say, profit and loss, and I'm going to open, let's say, journal entry, and reconcile. So I went ahead and opened each of those tabs manually by right-clicking, clicking on new tab. Now, RightTool actually has an option where you can automatically put everything in a new tab, and we'll talk about that in a second, but you notice that I opened those tabs manually. Now I can also close the tabs manually. I don't have to click on close all. I can just close one in particular. So when I close this one in particular, just click on X and it just closes that specific tab. So you can target which tab you want to close or close all in one shot. Okay, so that's manage tabs. Now let's talk about the search bar. The search bar is one of my favorite things inside RightTool because you can search any of the things that are inside all shortcuts or all reports. So for example, let's say I'm sitting here and I'm looking for every report that has the word profit in it. So I just type profit and it essentially gives me a list of every report or function or screen inside QuickBooks Online with the word profit, or maybe something with the word customer. Okay, then everything that has the word customer, and this could be a report or this could be a function. So for example, if I go to customers, that's going to take me into the customers section. But also if I go down here and click on customer balance detail, that's a report. So anything that had the word customer that I searched, that's going to work right there and there. So that's a really cool thing that you have the universal search bar to search within every section or every report in QuickBooks Online that can be directly accessed via RightTool. Okay. Next thing we're going to look at is we're going to go back into the settings here and we're going to see more of the options that we can turn on. So we turned on manage tabs and we turned on universal search. The other thing we're going to turn on here is auto close left nav. What that does is it automatically closes the left navigation bar. So every time you open a new screen, that left navigation bar closes. So if you get accustomed to using RightTool, you don't want to have double left navigation bar and right navigation bar. The other thing we want to show you is the keyboard shortcuts. So I'm turning on those two features for now, the left navigation bar and the keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to click on save, refresh all QBO tabs. So everything gets refreshed. And then when I go back into QuickBooks Online, we're now going to see an automatic left navigation bar that gets closed. Notice that every time I go into any screen, that left navigation bar is completely closed. So for example, let's say I went to, let's go here. Let's go into settings and I go into all lists, okay? Left navigation bar remains closed. I go into settings and let's say I go to reclassify transactions. Left navigation bar remains closed. I would have to manually open and close it. That's what that setting is for. Now let's talk about keyboard shortcuts. Let me just close all the tabs here for now. And then I'll just go back into favorites and just go back into the home screen for a minute. So now let's talk about keyboard shortcuts. So there's a little icon here that takes you straight into our website that has every single keyboard shortcut that's available. Now with QuickBooks Online without RightTool, there's a small subsection of keyboard shortcuts available. We actually put them in the website so you know exactly what comes with QuickBooks Online. So there's a few set of keyboard shortcuts that are there, and we definitely recommend for you to take advantage of them. However, we went sort of above and beyond and we took a look at the keyboard and said, hey, how can we use the entire keyboard for keyboard shortcuts? And basically almost every button in your keyboard can be used with combination of Control-Alt or Control-Shift to control anything inside QuickBooks Online or RightTool. So for example, if you wanted to go straight to a bill, you would hit Control-Alt-B. So I go back into QuickBooks Online, I do Control-Alt-B, and that would take me straight into the bills screen. So that's kind of what the purpose is. So after a while, you start memorizing some of these and you start really digging, going straight from a keyboard shortcut. Now there's a couple of special ones here that you will see, for example, Control-Alt-H and Control-Alt-Y. Now those are not ordinary keyboard shortcuts. Those actually get activated when you're looking at an actual transaction. So for example, let's say I'm looking at an actual bill that was created. So this is an actual transaction. And generally I can click on more and I can go into transaction journal or audit history. That's what Control-Alt-Y and H will be for. So Control-Alt-H would take me into the history of the transaction. That's called the audit history. So I don't have to click on more and audit history. Basically, that's what I saved. I saved that extra click. Or I can do Control-Alt-Y and it will take me into the transaction journal. Okay, so these are basically shortcuts to get you to places that you can still get generally in QuickBooks, but you have to click a bunch of places to get there, and that's the point of the keyboard shortcut. So I definitely recommend you look at that. Now, there's a couple of really cool keyboard shortcuts I want to show you. I'm not going to show you all of them just to not make the video that long, but a couple of them that are really worth looking at. So for example, as I look at my favorites, Control Alt and any of those numbers from 1 to 10 take me straight there. So I created a custom favorite to take me into the register for savings, for example. Control Alt 6 will take me straight into there. And that's the purpose of that numbering in the favorites, that you can create your own custom shortcuts to up to 10 places in QuickBooks Online and put them right there in the favorites screen. So they're not there just so you can open all or so you can recall them. They're also there so you can use a combination of keys and get straight to it. So let's say I want to go into the chart of accounts. I'll go Control Alt 5 and that will take me into the chart of accounts. It is all customizable. So if I want chart of accounts to be 1, I click and drag, put it in the top. And then now if I do Control Alt 5, that will take me into reconcile, because that's following that the order in that favorites list. So that's really, really interesting one. Another one I want to show you is Control Alt left bracket and right bracket. So if you do Control Alt left bracket in this case, or less than, the symbol for less than, that one toggles between favorites and all shortcuts. Let me just zoom in here for a second so you can see it. So that's left bracket or less than. That toggles between all shortcuts and all reports. Or I can do Control Alt right bracket, and that toggles between favorites and manage tabs. So basically, you can search all 4 of those sections in RightTool, or you can go straight to them via keyboard shortcuts. Now there's also Control Alt left arrow. That one opens and closes the left navigation bar, the QuickBooks one, and then Control Alt right arrow opens and closes RightTool. Okay, so you can basically open and close the left or the right navigation bar on demand with your keyboard shortcuts. And there's a whole bunch of other keyboard shortcuts in here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll just go through one specific one that I love, which is Control Space. And Control Space takes me straight into search. So I want to quickly look for a profit and loss detail, for example. So I hit Control Space. That moves the cursor here over to search. And then in here, I can put, let's say, the word detail, and then I have the list of all the reports that contain the word detail, and type profit and loss detail, and it finds the specific place I want to go. So that Control Space enables that search bar, so I can just start typing and I don't have to take my mouse all the way there to start my search. Now, there's so many keyboard shortcuts. I encourage you to explore them. The next feature I want to talk to you about is dictation. So I'm going to go back here into the settings menu, and I'm going to turn on that setting. So I'm going to go down here where it says enable speech to text dictation. I'm going to turn that one on. And then the other one I'm going to turn on is making sure that Control Space and Control Shift A also enable dictation. So I'm going to explain to you how that works in a second. So I enable dictation, and I can use dictation. I'm going to go back into the screen. I can use it in my universal search. So I can do the Control Space to enable that search bar and enable the dictation, and then I can just talk to it, and then it will find something for me. So for example, look, my hands are up. I'm just going to hit Control Space, bring my hands up, and just talk to it. So I'm going to go to Control Space, profit and loss detail. And there it is. It did the search for me right here. So it found profit and loss detail. I didn't type that, okay? Let me show you one more thing. I'm going to do the same thing, and then I'm going to say the word go after it. You're going to see what happens. So I'm going to hit Control Space, profit and loss detail, go. And notice what happens is that go command at the end basically says, hey, if you know the name of the specific place you want to go to, just say it, say the word go, and QuickBooks will take you straight to it. Now you're going to have to memorize, obviously, where all the other things you could access. So for example, let's say something with the word vendor. Let's see what's out there with the word vendor. So we have vendor balance summary. Let's try that. So I'm going to X out of that, do Control Space, vendor balance summary, go. And there you go. So I recognized my voice and went straight into that report. It is really, really cool. So this is one of our attempts to increase accessibility around QuickBooks Online, maybe for folks that can only use one hand, or believe that talking to QuickBooks could be faster than typing things. That could really, really help. But there's one more area of dictation worth mentioning, which is, I'm going to go into invoice for a second just so you can see. I'm going to go into invoice. And then let's say I'm typing up an invoice and there's a big part of the description that's just going to take a long time to type. So you can just dictate into it. So for example, I'm going to pick an item here, and then here's his description. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-A and then just talk to QuickBooks so it can type stuff for me. Repair downstairs bathroom, broken door, replace all knobs. Okay. So basically I just talked to QuickBooks and it typed that stuff for me. So that actually works everywhere actually. So if I want to search for a customer via dictation, let's say I want to find this customer called Brian Shu. So I'm just going to delete here the customer, hit Control-Shift-A, Brian Shu. Okay, close. we're getting there, okay? But I could have just stopped at Brian. So for example, let's try again. So Control-Shift-A, Brian. Okay, so I type Brian in there, and then if I only happen to have one Brian, there we go. So any field, drop down, memo, description, otherwise, you can dictate with that Control-Shift-A option. Okay, so it's going to be a game changer for a lot of people. I know that for sure. All right, let's go back into the settings and let's talk about other settings. So the rest of the things here are more like sort of like fixing little annoyances that QuickBooks has. For example, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you enhanced transaction escape, and I'm going to give you void memo automation. You're going to see what these two things mean. So I'm going to hit save and refresh to save that, and I'm going to show you those two things. So the first thing that it fixes, which is that enhanced transaction escape, this is a little tiny annoyance that QuickBooks has. That sometimes when you go and open a transaction, escape command doesn't work for closing it. So right now, the way it works is I click on that and click on invoice, and then I can hit escape at least twice, and it'll close the screen. So I'm going to go and open up receive payment, and I can hit escape at least twice, and it will close the screen. I can go and pick, check, and then hit escape at least twice, and it'll close the screen. You will notice in your QuickBooks, if you don't have RightTool, that some screens, the escape work and some doesn't. So what we've done unilaterally is just fix the issue altogether. So the other thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to go into an invoice, and the void feature in QuickBooks is awesome. It's a great feature. The only annoyance that QuickBooks has is if I void a transaction, I sort of lose that dollar amount that originally was. So you manually have to go into the memo and type in what the transaction was. So what we've done with the void memo automation is if I go to more and void, what happens is RightTool will actually type out the original transaction amount and who voided it and when. So when I hit, let's say I hit save, for example, that transaction gets voided, and I'm going to go back and look at the transaction again. It should be here somewhere. Let's open that transaction. The transaction is there. It's voided the way it's supposed to, and you see the memo right there, original dollar amount, who did it, and when. So it's truly a beautiful thing. So I'm going to get excited of that, and let's go look at another feature. So I'm going to click on settings, and then we're going to turn on restrict transfers in bank feeds. It's one of those weird little things that we've added here that accounting professionals, accountants, are going to appreciate quite a bit, because most QuickBooks users, especially power users, hate transfers, or the concept of transfers in QuickBooks Online. So I'll explain to you really quick for some context. I'm going to open one of the bank accounts here, and when you download transactions from the bank, some transactions come in as transfer. Now, accountants, we don't like transfers. We don't like when end users use transfers. We don't even like when we use transfers ourselves. So these transactions that come in as transfers, basically when you turn on that restrict transfers feature, you won't be able to add them. So you don't have the ability to create transfers. And the minute you actually click on any of these transactions, the transfer option completely disappears. So this is our attempt to sort of get rid of transfers. We really can't do it because it's a fundamental part of QuickBooks Online, but we restricted the user from being able to save transfers. Now, a lot of end users are not going to like doing this, but accountants would love if their users, if their customers or their clients, the small business owners, don't do transfers, because long story short, transfers can cause a whole bunch of messiness in the books if they're not used properly. All right, let's go back into settings. So this one called close tabs on company change. If you turn that on, what happens is, if I have a whole bunch of tabs open, and I'm gonna go ahead and just open a couple of tabs here. Okay, so I'm gonna open a couple of tabs just to illustrate it, okay? So let's say I have a whole bunch of tabs open, and I happen to have multiple QuickBooks Online accounts or QuickBooks Online company files. When you go into the gear menu and click on switch company, or if you're an accountant and you click on the client switcher and you click on any of the clients, what these settings will do is exactly what it's saying. So close all tabs on change. Basically, there's a whole bunch of tabs here open. If I switch here to, let's say, this company, all the tabs close. And there's particularities as to why that's important or not important, but sometimes you just don't want to have a whole bunch of dead tabs pretty much in there. And the other one here is refresh tabs on company change, which is sort of the opposite of close tabs. And essentially what this one does is, let's say I do have, let's just do the same thing. I have a couple of tabs here open, and I'm in this company here called Demo Company 1. And let's say that when I switch to another company file or another company, I don't want these tabs to close. I essentially want to land on the exact same place on the other company. So if I switch over to back to this company, what will happen is it will send a refresh across all the tabs. And if those tabs are open, it's going to take me back to the exact same screen I was in originally on the other company file. So it's pretty much self-explanatory. Again, little tiny sort of annoyance that we're fixing with that. The audit log new tab, basically, there's a little glitch when you open up an audit log for a transaction. So by doing this, essentially, it opens a new tab and it avoids that glitch. So we'll skip that one. Match tab names, that was actually really important. A lot of our users have told us that happens to be their favorite one. So I'm going to explain to you what that one means. And I'm also going to show you report enhanced drill down. So I'm going to show you those two here, match tab names and report enhanced drill down. So I'm going to click on save and refresh all tabs. I'm going to go back into one of the tabs here that is loading. And as soon as it finishes loading, I'm going to show you exactly what match tab names mean. And essentially, one of the challenges that we have with QuickBooks Online is that sometimes these tab names on the top, they don't have sort of explicit titles. Sometimes QuickBooks will just call it the browser will just call it QuickBooks. And let me show you what that means. So here's clear, right? This one's called banking. This one's called homepage. This one's called profit and loss. And this one's called journal. Clear names. And in my tabs, in my tab manager, it shows that they're really clear. If I turn that off, match tab names, and refresh all the QuickBooks Online tabs, I'm going to go back, and this is what it looks like when you don't have RightTool. Essentially, some of these have clear names, some don't. Like, for example, this one that says QuickBooks here, that one normally would say, or when we use the renaming, that would say homepage. So now it says QuickBooks, so it doesn't really mean anything. And then this one has the company name, which basically is a report. And this one says bank transaction. This one's good. This one says journal entry. So it's sort of hit and miss. So what I like about matching tab names is that it just absolutely makes sure that every tab has a name that makes sense. And even the reports themselves have the correct name, which is probably one of the biggest things. So for example, I'm going to close that profit and loss. And what I'll do is I'll pull up a couple of reports to show you. So I'm going to go to reports, and then I'm going to pull up, let's say, the unpaid bills report. Okay. And it says there unpaid bills. That's the name of the report, or balance sheet, or vendor balance detail. It says right there, vendor balance details. It's just pretty clear and straightforward. It actually names it what it is instead of just saying QuickBooks or saying the company name. Okay, so that's matching tab names. Now, the other setting that we turned on was this reports enhanced drill down. So that was a really important one, which we're going to talk to you in a second, which is the ability for reports to drill down into new tabs. So I'm going to close these tabs here, and then I'm going to go into a regular profit and loss report, a straightforward profit and loss report. Normally, when you are not using RightTool and you click on one of these things, it stays in the same tab and it closes the report you're working on. What the enhanced report drill down does is that every time you're working in a report, everything opens in a new tab, allowing you to look at the original report, looking at the detailed report, And if I click on any of these transactions, it also opens in a new tab. So now I have my original profit and loss, I have my detailed drill down, and then I clicked here, it was one of the invoices, it went into the invoice. So basically properly creates new tabs so I sort of don't lose the stuff that I was looking at before. And the other really cool thing is that if that I could close any of these tabs on demand after I'm done, or let's say, for example, I hit save and close on that invoice, RightTool knows to close that tab because that tab only really opened as a drill down. So it knows that if that transaction was opened from a drill down, if I save and close or I'm done with that transaction, it will close it automatically because there really shouldn't be that additional tab open. So that's enhanced report drill down. The other cool thing about the enhanced report drill down is that you can also choose if you don't want these things to open in new tabs, but you want to right click instead. So let me show you exactly what that means. So I'm going to click on the settings. I'm going to turn off enhanced report drill down, click on save and close. So in other words, if I go back into my profit and loss and I click on any of these numbers, it takes me into the detailed report, but all inside the same tab. Now, if I go back into that report, and if I wanted to choose to open that one in a new tab, I can do it. I can right click and go to open new tab. Without RightTool, you couldn't right click on a report. You can right click, but it doesn't do anything. So, so that ability to right click and open a new tab on demand is basically enabled in RightTool. Even if the enhanced report drill down is turned off, you have the ability to right click and open that. Okay, so last thing I'll show you in this group is RT shortcuts open a new tab. So now you experienced just the reports drilling down. Now what I'm going to show you is if I turn on RT shortcuts open a new tab, anything that I navigate inside QuickBooks Online. So if I click on the new button and then go to expense, it all stays in the same tab. So if I use the left navigation bar and I click on anything in here, it stays on the same tab, and that's normal behavior. But if I want to navigate with the RightTool with the RT shortcuts open a new tab, basically anything I click on the right side opens in a new tab automatically. So it gives me the ability to click organically within QuickBooks Online to keep on the same tab or open the new tabs when you're using RightTool. That's essentially what RightTool is in a nutshell. We have this feature called extended print options. I think that one's worth mentioning. So we're going to turn that one on. And then we're going to show you bill print and journal print. So normally in QuickBooks Online, you cannot print bills, you cannot print journal entries. So with RightTool and that option turned on, going to click on journal entry, and I'm going to show you that for a minute. So we're going to open up an existing journal entry, and we're actually going to be able to print the journal entry, which is cool. And this works both for journal entries and bills. So I'm going to open an existing journal entry, which is right here, and there's a button here that says RightTool print, and eventually it launches the ability to print the journal entry, something that QuickBooks Online does not have internal capacity to do so. Within the same realm of journal, so again, that works on bills and journal entries, but within the realm of journals, we're going to click here, it says export journal to CSV. I should have covered that earlier, but we'll cover it now. I'm going to hit save and close. And then what happens is if you are sitting and looking at a journal entry, there will be an export button in here. So I'm going to refresh the screen, let that journal entry load completely. And there's a button that says export to CSV. Click on that, and you can export the journal entry to a CSV file, like an Excel type of file. So you can both print the journal entries and export them to CSV, and you can print the bills too. Don't export the bills to CSV, but you can print those bills too. All right, I think we're gonna go over the final settings here, and we'll probably say this will be the last one. So colorblind negatives, this is something that we released for a couple of our users that cannot see red. So like red looks a lot like brown or black. So we did essentially change the reports. So when there's a negative red, it shows blue instead. So I'll show you how that works. Obviously, if you can see red, that's totally, you don't need that. But for those colorblind folks, I think they would appreciate that very much. And also there's this option here that says copy bill memo when clicking mark as paid. I think you'll like that one too. And those will be the two last I will show you. So I'm gonna click save and close or save and refresh all the reports. I'm gonna go back and maybe pull up a profit and loss. Okay, there it is. Let me do here all dates. Hopefully there's a negative number there somewhere. Perfect. Let me click on customize, and then I'm going to enable show red. Okay, so on the normal circumstances, you will see red numbers when they're negative. Now they're blue. So again, that's only for the folks that can't see red, but they can see blue. So that's one way they can that can jump at them. And the last thing is copying the bill memo to the bill payment. A lot of people appreciate this. This is when you have an actual bill. So I'm going to open up that bill, and you pay the bill, but you want to copy the contents of that memo into the bill payment, which is something you can't do now with QuickBooks Online. So for example, let's say we have a memo here that says paying purchase order number 17 approved by Mike. Whatever it happens to be, there happens to be a memo in there of sorts, and basically I want that memo to transfer, to copy into the bill payment memo. So if I click here, it says mark as paid, it will take me to the bill payment screen, and then you will notice down here that it copies that memo from the bill, something that QuickBooks Online cannot do natively. Anyway, again, in the settings button, anything that doesn't have the Pro next to it, that's basically without the Pro, means that's all included with the free version of RightTool. It's a companion for QuickBooks Online. It is ad supported, so you're gonna see little ads rotate on the bottom right. So our sponsors per se are the ones supporting the free version of the tool. And after I use it, after you get accustomed to it, maybe you'll start liking or wanting those pro features. You can always subscribe to RightTool. Subscribe whenever you want to use it. Use the pro features. When you're done using them, unsubscribe, and you will always have the free version. Hopefully forever. Anyway, I hope you liked it. I will put a link in the description so you can download that. I'll also put a link to all the keyboard shortcuts. I will put a link to all the descriptions of every single setting and feature that RightTool has, so you have the ability to research, download the free version, check it out, and go from there. Anyway, thank you. I hope you like this video, and I'll see you on the next one.